Today's video is going to be similar to the previous video. I'm going to share my screen and just talk you through an in-person presentation that I did last year at the Australian Institute of Refrigeration, Air Conditioning, Heating at their Big Data and Analytics Forum. And what I wanted to talk about was there's a bit of a crossover between what the building management system industry or the building automation system industry does and cloud technology. There's a crossover there. And it's this thought around where will the BMS be in 10 years' time as the technology industry gains more momentum over the next 10 years? Obviously, this is my opinion. I can't see into the future. But I'll talk you through the thought process that I went through to come to this conclusion of where I think the BMS will be in 10 years' time, and you can make up your own mind if you agree or you don't agree. Right, let me share my screen. Let's get into it. The BMS getting left behind in a world of technology. Where will the BMS be in 10 years? To predict the future, we need to analyze the past. If we go back to the very beginning, before the 1990s, we didn't have a building management system. We didn't have a server with graphics, alarms, trend reports. We didn't have controllers networked together, communicating with each other. We didn't have electric meters, water meters, gas meters, thermometers. We didn't have integrations to all these different things, fire panels, generators, UPS systems. Basically, we had a very simple standalone HVAC control system, a standalone mechanical control system, pneumatics, thermostats, relays, time clocks. In the very beginning, we had no building management system. We actually had a HVAC control system or a mechanical control system. The standalone HVAC control system evolved into the building management system or the building automation system. Now, I started in the BMS industry around 1998. So if we just roll that up to around year 2000, in year 2000, we already had BMS servers and workstations, graphics, alarms, trends, and reports. We had BMS controllers that could communicate with each other. They were fully programmable. So from the point of view of an HVAC control system, we had all of that very similar to today. We had that in the early 2000s. What we didn't have is all the other stuff. We didn't have integrations, high-level interfaces to all sorts of stuff. We had almost no metering. The BMS was basically an HVAC control system. So still in the early 2000s, the BMS was an HVAC control system. It wasn't a standalone HVAC control system, it was now a digital control system. So in those days, the BMS was the technology system in commercial buildings. The BMS was the only company in buildings that was running networks and communicating with things and had servers and graphics and alarms and trends and visualization of information for the mechanical control system. The BMS was the technology system in commercial buildings. So, as equipment suppliers, variable speed drives, electric meters, fire panels, generators, UPS systems, as equipment suppliers started to evolve themselves, and they started to supply, communication interface cards as default with their equipment. All of a sudden, we were able to connect other things into our HVAC control system. So because we were the only technology provider, it made sense for us to add hundreds and hundreds of new devices into the BMS. Just sprinkle them in. If you upgrade the mechanical board and there was 2 new electric meters, it was great. Just get the closest RS485 subnetwork, drag it across, pick up those 2 electric meters. As you upgraded those direct online motors with variable speed drives, we just connected them into the BMS. So as the next 10 years went by, we were just connecting more and more and more stuff into the building management system network. It sort of made sense to do that. But we did not provide fit for purpose networks. So as we're adding hundreds and hundreds of more devices into our networks, we didn't go and hire networking engineers. We didn't start building more robust fit for purpose networks. And I'm sure a lot of you will be saying to me, yeah, Bryce, that's because the mechanical consultant didn't specify that we should do that. And that is probably true. There is an issue there, but as an industry, as the building management system specialists, we should have evolved better ourselves and started to provide more fit for purpose networks as our networks were growing and growing and growing. So the first thing where the problems all started is we gave away the energy management system network because we were just sprinkling hundreds of electric meters all over the BMS, buried in already overloaded RS485 subnetworks. And in my opinion, comfort control is quite tolerant of poor network performance. Temperature control, if the BMS doesn't update a temperature sensor immediately, if you drop a packet of data, it's not the end of the world. But in the early days, energy management systems suffered when a 0 kilowatt hour snuck into the database. It's a zero spark. It used to mess them up big time. Nowadays, we sort of, energy management systems can sort of like fill in the zeros. They can look at the kilowatt hour sample before and afterwards and then fill that in. We couldn't do that in the first few versions of our energy management systems. So I remember when consultants started to specify that the energy management system should be separate from the BMS. I remember those days. The specification said the energy management system network shall be separate from the BMS network. I remember those days because we did such a bad job of designing these networks and had such resulting poor quality of data for the energy management systems. They weren't working. Consultants separated that up. So we gave away the energy management system network design and the installation. And this is when everything started to fall apart. This was our first failure as the technology provider in buildings. 10 years ago, we gave away energy management systems. So because we provided this really poor energy management system, we lost the network part of it. And then we started to see these cloud technology companies start popping up who are specializing in visualizing energy management system data, because we did a very bad job of visualizing this power consumption data that we were collecting. We basically would just integrate to 100 electric meters, integrate them into the BMS database, and then we just put a little graphic, a little pop-up, a little square pop-up, like a photo of the electric meter. We just map in there the voltage, current, kilowatt hours, frequency, power factor and stuff. We just visualized the raw data we were collecting, but we didn't create virtual meters. We didn't create engaging dashboards and widgets like that it would be useful for someone to try and diagnose power consumption. We basically visualized the energy management system data, the kilowatt hour information, simply to help us commission the energy management system, witness it, present it, and sign off. That's what we basically did. We just mapped the information stagnant onto graphics to help us commission and hand over. That's an important key point, that we didn't build the visualization and the application for what its intended purpose was, for analyzing and diagnosing power consumption. We built something just simply to visualize the information to help us commission, test, and hand over the BMS. So all of a sudden, in 2010, around there, we started to see cloud technologies pop up that were specializing in visualizing energy management systems. We gave that away. We're like, hey, technology companies, have energy management systems. You'll love it. We gave that away. Then what happened is we gave away building analytics for a slightly different failure. Since around 2014, I've been tracking what BMS companies charge for building analytics. So every time I did a BMS upgrade, in my tender form, when I was getting pricing for materials and project management and commissioning and the cost breakdown for the BMS upgrade, I always had a line item there which was energy management system and building analytics. What was the cost to install the application for building analytics? And what was the subscription service every year? I should track those costs. And they used to be like around $30,000 to install the application and engineer it, and about $20,000 or $30,000 a year subscription service. But the problem was this. And I remember sitting in these meetings with BMS companies, and I'm saying to them, hang on a sec, you're telling me the customer has to pay to upgrade the server to the latest version so it's ready for analytics? Yes, Bryce, that's what we need to do. And then you want us to pay for you to engineer the whole thing up, clean the database up, set everything up? Yes. And then you want me to pay $20,000, $30,000 a year for the subscription service? They said yes. And I said, are you going to reduce the $100,000 a year periodic preventative maintenance contract to offset that cost? Now that you're more efficient, service technicians are more effective, they can use technology and data to be more effective. And the answer was no. We're still going to retain the $100,000 a year preventative maintenance cost. So you were paying $100,000 a year to check every single piece of equipment in a 12-month cycle, like physically check things under a preventative maintenance contract. Now you want to get an extra $20,000 a year subscription service on top of that. So now it's $120,000. That was the offer that BMS companies went to market with. And it was simple. The market said, we don't want that. We're not going to pay you extra. So customers didn't buy it. And they bought it from cloud technology companies. That's why building owners and facility managers bought analytics from cloud technology companies, because the BMS industry had the wrong offer. If the BMS company had said, listen, customer with this amazing analytics thing. You're going to love this thing. What we're going to do is we're going to set the engineering up. Please pay us $30,000 to set it up. But what we'll do is the $20,000 subscription service, we'll absorb that in our $100,000 a year maintenance contract. We'll absorb it into there because it makes us more effective. We can spend less physical hours on site. We'll absorb that $20,000. If BMS companies had done that, every single customer said, yes, I'll have that. It doesn't cost me extra. You're going to build it into maintenance. You're restructuring your entire maintenance process from end to end to include technology to make yourself more effective. They would buy that. There would be no building analytics cloud market if that was the case. The BMS industry created an entire building analytics market because they had the wrong offer to market. We gave it away. The BMS could have provided the integrated communications network. So originally, each trade installed their own network. The BMS company, lighting control system, security, access control, everyone installed their own network. So then we started building these integrated communications networks where all the trades, all the services could share the same network. If we had designed and installed fit for purpose BMS networks, we would have retained the energy management system network and be best placed to provide the integrated communications network. We gave the RCN to the electrical contractor. So we gave away the RCN. It was the result of us giving away the separate energy management system network. If BMS companies just did the right thing 10, 20 years ago and started to design and install fit for purpose networks for all the hundreds of additional devices we were adding to the network, the BMS company would have been best placed to provide the integrated communications network. The reason why I went to electrical, at least in Australia, was because the BMS company failed in their own BMS networks. So why would you let them connect everything else to it? The BMS industry gave away the integrated communications network. The BMS could have provided the data warehouse. Let me read through this. If the BMS had retained the building's network, the integrated communications network, which you should have, and had retained the building technology role, energy management systems and building analytics, and then expanded the BMS database to the data warehouse, then the BMS would have been the data warehouse supplier. So nowadays, in Australia, we first created these integrated communications networks. We did that first for like 5 years. So all the servers were still, individual. The BMS server was a box somewhere in a plant room. The lighting control system server was somewhere else. So after we created the integrated communications network, then we would in these racks, the BMS server would be here and all the other servers would all be in here together. That was step 2. And currently what we're doing is all these individual hardware boxes, we're packing them together into one big virtualized server environment. So the BMS server is a virtual server. The energy management system is a virtual server. Lighting control system, virtual server. For the lifts, a virtual server. So if the BMS company had done all those other things better and the BMS was providing the integrated communications network and we'd be expanding our databases, we would have been well placed to become the supplier of the data warehouse because we would still be the primary technology provider in buildings, like we were in the early 2000s when we were the only technology provider in buildings. But over 10 years of giving things away and messing things up, we lost more and more market share. The BMS could have provided the integration platform. If the BMS had retained the building's network and then the building technology role, we retained the building technology role, and then we expanded the BMS database to be the whole building's data warehouse. And if we enhanced the BMS graphics, alarms, and trends reports, then the BMS would have been the integration platform supplier. The single pane of glass integrating all systems plus, facility management type things, maintenance applications and, creating invoices and work orders, all that thing would have been in a single pane of glass, the integration platform. Let me pause for a second. I know a lot of you don't believe me, but if you're old like me and you've been around since the late 90s, what we are providing for BMS graphics, alarms, trends, and reports nowadays is not much better than we were provided 20 years ago. It is extremely embarrassing how basic our graphics are. I said to you a minute ago, we visualized the energy management system data, the kilowatt hours, just enough to help us commission the BMS and maintain the BMS. Remember I told you that? We didn't build the energy management system with virtual meters and dashboards and widgets and things to make it more useful. The BMS graphics, alarms, trends, and reports is exactly the same things. If you think about it, a chill water graphic, a hot water graphic, an air handling unit, all we're doing is taking our inputs and outputs from the database and mapping them onto pages. There's the air handling unit, temperature, pressure, humidity, heating, cooling valves. There's the chill water system, temperatures, pressure, set points. We're just mapping information onto pages to assist us with commissioning the BMS, witnessing it, handing over it, and maintaining it. We are not building graphics, alarms, trends, and reports in a very useful way that the users, facility managers, sustainability people, energy efficiency people can properly analyze and diagnose the performance of their building. You might not see that, just believe me, we're not doing that. So if cloud technology companies did a better job of energy management systems and did a better job of building analytics, well, maybe they should also do a better job of just visualizing the whole BMS, the chiller page, boiler page, everything. So this integration platform, it could have been the BMS that provided that if we just retained our technology role from the early 2000s. Next, the BMS will give away. So the BMS industry gave away energy management systems, analytics, the network, the data warehouse, and the integration platform. Next, the BMS will give away third-party monitoring. Now listen carefully here. If the network is not by BMS, and the database is not by BMS, and the visualization, the integration platform, the single pane of glass is not by BMS, why would you connect the third-party monitoring, the generator, the lighting control system, the fire panel into the BMS? Why would you do that? You wouldn't do that. You go straight into the network that's not BMS, into the database that's not BMS, and you'd visualize it on the integration platform. It doesn't make sense for third-party monitoring to go into the BMS when the BMS isn't doing any of the network collection, database management, or visualization. The BMS is going to give away cyber security any minute because we're not doing that very well. Like, there's a whole market waiting to be started up called BMS Cyber Security. Like, we have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of buildings around the world that do not have a dedicated firewall, just using some like free, remote desktop type stuff applications. Advanced optimization. So these cloud companies that were very happy to accept energy management systems and were very happy to accept building analytics are now working on advanced optimization, analyzing data, and then they're just starting to do it. It's not full on yet. They're starting to want to write down into the BMS, and adjust temperature set points and pressure set points, AHU supply temperature and pressure set points, chill water temperature set points, condenser water temperature set points, analyze the load of the building, the performance of the building. We're going to give that away next. Here we go. The BMS will circle back to providing only the HVAC control system. If the ICN is not by BMS, and the data warehouse is not by BMS, and visualization is not by BMS, and the applications, energy management system analytics, are not by BMS, what will the BMS be left with? HVAC control, sad face emoji. We will circle back to where we were in the late 90s as being the provider of the HVAC control system, the control of the chillers and boilers and air handling units, fan corners, chill beams, and package units. We will be the HVAC control system. We will not be the building management system. Our name will change from the building management system to the HVAC control system. I'm serious. Like, we are at a crossroads right now. If we don't do something dramatically different, like get our heads out of the sand, if we don't do that, we're going to circle back. I don't want to be an HVAC controls consultant. I want to stay and be a BMS consultant. We're at a crossroads right now. I've been like banging on about this sort of stuff for about 3 years on YouTube. No one's listening. I'm telling you now, we're going to give this whole thing away. There's a lot of people that think that we'll give away the HVAC control system also through packaged control systems. Fan core units, chilled beams, VAV boxes coming to site with packaged control systems. That's quite normal in lots of countries. We're already having it now with air handling units being shipped with controllers in them pre-wired with factory controls for air handling units. And we have chiller management systems already by a specialist third party. We are on the brink of giving it all away. I don't think we'll give away HVAC control, but some people do, and it's definitely possible. Just as the BMS industry opened the door, they could close it again. BMS companies could reasonably easy pull energy management systems and analytics back into the BMS as a free service built into their existing maintenance contract. Then optimization, cybersecurity, maybe the networks and the integration platforms, you could pull all that back. It freaks me out that BMS companies do not provide an energy management system and building analytics as part of the construction phase of the project just because the mechanical consultant didn't specify it. You're spending $1 million, you're working a job for a year, just suck that up. Just provide the EMS analytics as part of your offering, suck it up, and reap the rewards for the next 20 years and shut down that market. Stop giving it away. Suck it up and reap the benefits for the next 20 years. Stop crying about it and fix it yourselves. Nobody else is going to fix our problems. Any questions? None, because it's Saturday morning and I'm sitting here and I'm not at the gym. You can't ask me questions. That's it. If you made it this far, thank you. I appreciate it. Like and subscribe. If you have any ideas how to fix this, I'd love to hear about it. Comment below and let me know your thoughts. This is a very frustrating thing for me. You might be able to tell by my tone. I get frustrated about it because I know how to fix these things. I know how to fix them, but BMS companies are not interested. I spent 2023 transitioning out of client-side consulting into, contractor-side consulting, built solutions to these problems, went out to market, talked to BMS companies and we can fix these things, you could earn this much more money, and they just they weren't interested. They're like, that sounds great, Bryce, don't call us, we'll call you. And I just understand why it is, why BMS companies don't want to do better. I have a few ideas, but I'm not going to share them openly online. But if you have any thoughts around how to move forward from this, let me know your thoughts. It frustrates me to death that the BMS industry has its head buried in the sand and they're thinking everything's cool. And things are not cool. I promise you, things are not cool. We're heading for trouble. But anyway, 2024, I've given that up. I'm back client-side consulting. So again, now, customers, they will pay to fix things. I've just got to force the BMS company to do it. They don't want to do it proactively and get paid to do it. They want to wait for somebody else to fix the problem. They want to wait till a mechanical consultant or myself, a BMS consultant, specifies the fucking change and then they will fix it. They don't want to do it off their own back. I don't get it. I'm going to go before I say something stupid. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.